Vivekananda very clearly pointed out that these 4 yogas, they are not 4 watertight compartments, and they are not selected by choice, as it were. I like this yoga, so I will practice. It's not like that. They are constitutional. They are a constitutional necessity with us, because we have all these faculties, as I said, of intelligence, of emotion, will, and the propensity towards action, and the meditative mind. Since we have all of this, all of the yogas require to be combined. In fact, if you check and see, emotion itself shines bright when there is awareness supporting it. That emotion which shines in full awareness is called bhakti. And that awareness which unfolds by one-pointed devotion towards it is called jnana. So these are not different things actually. Through sadhana, we understand the place of all of this in our lives. There is one very beautiful observation made by a great saint who was actually a perfect combination of bhakti and jnana. His name was Madhusudan Saraswati, and he was a great Advaitin initially who turned over to bhakti. So he has written on both, on Advait Vedant as well as on bhakti. So he makes this very powerful observation. He says, Dvaitam mohaya bodhat prak prapte bodhe manishaya bhaktyartham kalpitam dvaitam advaitadapi sundaram. It means to say, ordinarily emotion or this dualistic attitude, it appears like an obstacle. It is an obstacle to the unawakened. Before bodha, before the dawn of knowledge, the attitude of mere duality is a kind of, it is not enough, it is not sufficient. But once one attains full awareness, complete illumination, then that attitude of duality, which is deliberately posited for the sake of bhakti, is even more beautiful than the knowledge of Advaita, the knowledge of non-duality. So you see, this is the position of the sadhak, that emotion which is inspired by awareness, full awareness shining behind it, and which is directed only towards God. That is a very ennobling, this is what is called bhav samadhi. It takes you directly to the nature of God. So this observation of Madhusudan Saraswati comes true in our spiritual life. If we practice sadhana like that, you will find this beautifully demonstrated again and again in the life of Sri Ramakrishna. Let me tell you here a remarkable incident which I recently read again. Many times we keep reading the gospel again and again because every time you read it, it will give you fresh insights. It is a book of realization, of a mind merged in God. That is why every time you read it, it will appear new. Every time you read it, it will appear sweeter. Every time you read it, it will give you more and more. So this particular incident in Sri Ramakrishna demonstrates the point which we have been discussing. See, the incident is like this. Once M is the author of the gospel, Mahendranath Gupta, author of the gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. He would visit Sri Ramakrishna in Dakshineshwar now and then, and he would see the incidents there, the words of the master, and he would go and record it in his diary at home. This is how finally the gospel was produced. Now, one day he is in the Dakshineshwar Kali temple. He enters the master's room. He sees that Sri Ramakrishna has just had his lunch, the prasad from the Kali temple, and he then sits on his cot. Sri Ramakrishna sits on his cot and then lies down for a few minutes. M is sitting at his feet, watching him. Not on the cot, but on the ground. He is sitting close to the master and seeing the master. Sri Ramakrishna gets up in a few minutes and then turning towards M, he says, "You know, I had this experience." He talks about his Advaitic experience. He says, "I saw that all living beings are, as it were, pills made of consciousness. only consciousness appearing in particular forms. I was once traveling from Kamarpukur to Bardwan, Sri Ramakrishna says, and on the way we came across a meadow. I entered the meadow. He would like vast spaces. So he entered the meadow, and what did he see? He saw the whole place and all its living beings teeming with consciousness. He says, I saw a line of ants crawling in that meadow, and from that I saw only the light of consciousness. I saw Brahman. Then he says, living beings appear to me like so many flowers in different stages of bloom. The different worlds of petals are in different stages of bloom. They appear to me like that. Saying this, Sri Ramakrishna suddenly entered into an abstract mood and plunged into Samadhi. He went into deep Samadhi for a long time. M was simply stunned looking at Sri Ramakrishna. See, that very same photo of Sri Ramakrishna which we worship, just like that, like a picture, he is sitting there, absorbed within himself, radiating bliss on his face. Now and then a few teardrops appear at the corner of his eyes, but he is absolutely still and as it were immersed in God consciousness, in supreme joy. M sits and watches the master. After a long time, Sri Ramakrishna comes out of this state of Samadhi, and then he says, before he says something, M notices that his eyes are swimming in bliss. His face is beaming with joy. Then he stands up and starts pacing the room slowly. Then he comes back to M and says, you know that Paramhamsa under the banyan tree in Dakshineshwar, he walks somewhat like this. Then he gives a very remarkable teaching. He says, see, when one gets rid of desire and grief, one attains to this state. What a magnificent, precious teaching this is. When one gets rid of desire and grief, sorrow, one attains to this state. M sees clearly the state of the Paramahamsa in him, immersed in bliss, exuding bliss, unable to control the joy in his heart. So Sri Ramakrishna has become like that. Then again he sits on the small couch, and then he starts saying, at once he connects with the Divine Mother. He enters the consciousness of Sagun Brahman and starts speaking with the Divine Mother, his Mother Kali. He says, "O Mother, I have no desire for the objects of this world, but Mother, I have desire for your lotus feet. I have desire for bhakti. A Paramhamsa also is a child, Mother. Doesn't a child need a mother? So you are the mother and I am the child." And he went on like this in such sweet words, with such bhav, intensity of emotion, that M writes, it would have melted a stone. This is Sri Ramakrishna's bhav at this stage, and M is simply stunned to see this whole scene. Just imagine, keep your mind in Dakshineshwar and let us look at this blissful image of the Master for some time. Then Sri Ramakrishna says, he again starts praying to the Mother, the dry knowledge of Advaita, I don't want it, Mother. He says, I want blissful devotion to your lotus feet. The Paramhamsa also is a child. Doesn't a child need a mother? And again he plunged into Samadhi. M, sitting at his feet, is now simply overwhelmed at this, and he looks at the Master and he starts thinking. See, Sri Ramakrishna himself says, Advaita Chaitanya Nityananda. This is what a man experiences on attaining the highest knowledge. This is not a sequence. These are synonyms. Advait, the knowledge of non-duality, the perception of complete unitary consciousness that comes only when there is Chaitanya, the awakening into full consciousness, the blossoming forth of full pure awareness, Brahman, and naturally follows Nityananda, great eternal bliss. So these three are actually synonyms. They indicate the same state, and that is verily what the Master is in right now. M sees this clearly. He is exuding that state, showing live demonstration of the highest truths of our scriptures. He is seeing in the very persona of the Master. So this incident clearly shows us, you see, the place of bhakti and jnana. The avatar comes to teach us the highest wisdom, and Sri Ramakrishna clearly show how these two alternate, how these two intermix, and in the life of sadhana, what an important role they play. So bhakti and jnana are to be practiced together until we reach the complete fruition of this bhakti and jnana. Then they will be found to be one and the same state. They both point to the same state.